again, welcome to your video number 2 in this series. In video 1, which I shared through your inbox a couple of days ago, if you didn't watch it, go watch it because it's important. You kind of have to understand that in order to understand this. But I told you a little bit about how 11 years ago I came to terms, life kicked me into a place where I had to come into terms and honestly look at the fact that I had a problem with alcohol. I was drinking too much. I was drinking when I said I wouldn't. I was drinking more than I said that I would, and I was drinking more often than I said I would too. So in other words, I, at the time, had a hard time, admitting that this was getting out of my control, right? Because admitting that meant that I had to do something about it. And I kind of didn't want to do something about it. So I had to continue doing it until my life was truly falling to pieces. And then when I made a decision to stop, that was the decision, right? I will stop drinking. And I thought that decision would be enough. And as I explained in that video, it wasn't. And that was difficult and it kept me stuck. And at some point, with enough hangovers and pain and consequences and, life blow-ups, I had to get to a point where I put the gloves down. And I love this expression because it really did feel like I was wrestling, with what I learned later was my addiction. And I was wrestling with it without understanding the monster that I was fighting. I was fighting a monster that I thought truly was me, that I was a shit person, that I was a failure, that I didn't have enough willpower. And it's really hard to advocate for yourself when you kind of also hate yourself. It's really hard to trust yourself in other areas of life when you can't trust yourself to even do the most basic, which at the time felt like the most important thing, and it was, which was the decision to get better. But I didn't say that, and I didn't see it like that. I didn't say I'm deciding to get better or I'm deciding to get help. I kept saying I'm deciding not to drink. And as it turns out, because my monster was addiction, and not everybody's monster is, yours can be a toxic habit, but mine was addiction, and there's a difference. Because mine was addiction, I just wasn't approaching it in the right way, right? But as I explained in my last video, the one thing that started the process of getting me out of that insanity, out of that loop, and out of that very painful cycle was the fact that I was hopeless enough and frustrated enough and just helpless enough to get curious and say, what is really happening? Like, what is going on? This is not cool. And that little curiosity that allowed me to kind of open the window a little bit, or the curtain, and start a peek at what may be behind all of this was the first step for me to powerfully start my journey. So in this video, I am going to talk to you about how I started that journey and what that journey looked like, because I have a really cool story of 11 years in recovery, which have been kind of a roller coaster. What happened is that in 2009, I did the only thing really that I knew to do when it came to trying to figure out this thing that I had with alcohol, this little hiccup issue, whatever I called it. Because I only knew that was the available solution, I took myself to a 12-step meeting. And in November, the 11th actually, of 2009. And for the first time I sat among a group of people that were, number one, talking openly about their own problems with drinking, which made me feel like I wasn't a defect, like maybe there were people like me. And they were talking about how their lives had changed completely because of a new whole, mindset and lifestyle and, program. And I heard really weird terms and it felt a little weird for me, but the gist of it is, as I sat there shaky and hungover, that these people were happy and that they sounded like they had been in a shitty place, like the one that I felt I was in at that moment, which I was. And I remember going home that evening and thinking, surely I can't be an alcoholic. Surely I can't be like them. In fact, I'm gonna do this my way. I'm gonna kind of show them, because what I really want is to quit drinking for a little while so that then I can learn to drink moderately. Well, that didn't work out. That didn't happen. But that's where I began, and it's normal. That's where we begin. We begin the fantasy of every person who actually struggles with alcoholism, addiction, in my case, because again, not everyone is an alcoholic, but I am, and it made me feel really good to understand that I had these characteristics that basically also validated the fact that I wasn't a shit person, but a person that had a disease. And I kind of, rather than feel like, oh crap, that feels awful, I was like, oh, sweet. So if you're explaining to me that this is not about me being a shit person, and that you kind of understand what's happening, because maybe it's happened to you too, it sounds like it, so what did you do? And so again, that's part of that curiosity, right? But I remember coming home that night and realizing it was such a scary premise, this whole idea of getting sober, right? Because alcohol is just so prevalent and so normalized, right? It's everywhere, even more so now than then. I mean, like now they have yoga Chardonnay classes, like for fuck's sake, and they, mommy juice, and you go to CVS and you're about to pay, and right there you have the wine. Like, this is 11 years ago, but even at the time it was pretty normalized, right? And so I thought, how am I gonna go to weddings? How am I gonna go to family events? How am I gonna navigate the holidays? I mean, this was November, right? It was about to be Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I'm from Mexico, and we celebrate like crazy. I mean, we celebrate all the way to when the three wise men come and leave like gifts in like the beginning of January. And so like every single event was about to happen. Now at work, I mean, every event, right, is gonna have wine. And by the way, I loved drinking my little mulled tea, with spices and a ton of rum and tequila and mixture and stuff. And so I was like, how am I gonna go through that? How am I gonna explain to people that I don't drink, right? It was such a part of my personality, right? The glass of red wine was an extension of my nails. How am I going to do this? It was so daunting and so terrifying. I can't really tell you if it scared me more, the judgment from the outside, the judgment from the inside, or this whole unknown of how this journey was gonna happen. But the point is, I was freaking terrified. But, so maybe you jive with what I'm saying, but because I'd gone through the experience of the consequences and the loop and the, everything that I described of this insanity of I say I'm not going to, but I end up doing it, and every day is the same, and that became a decade of my life. I was also equally scared of staying stuck there and knowing that my life was just going downhill. And so what I'm trying to tell you, not to bum you out, but I'm giving you a dose of reality so that you also know that if you're feeling these things, you're not alone, right? And that they change and that they're part of the process, is that I was scared of doing that unknown, terrifying, sober thing, but I was also scared of what could happen if I stayed where I was. So there was just no good solution. There was no endorse C. I mean, there wasn't. I'm telling you that there is, but there wasn't in as far as my eye and my heart could see. And so I had to pick my pain, right? And I talk a lot about this in my course, which pain are you picking? Because when you start this journey, that's something that I want to make sure you understand. Every time that you change your mind and you say, tomorrow I'll begin, not today because Thanksgiving is right around the corner, because there's never gonna be a good moment to start this. I mean, let's stop the bullshit, right? And you can bullshit the world, but you can't bullshit yourself. And I'm asking you right now to like, just think about this. Because that's kind of like what we do, right? We always say Monday, full moon. I mean, I will even go to the cosmos to find the right time when I'm gonna begin that thing. And the truth is there's never gonna be a great time to begin because it's scary, right? But every time that you say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, but not today, like you're picking the pain of the cycle, the pain of the slavery, for lack of a better term, the pain of the hangover, the pain of the shame and the blame and the guilt and the disconnection with yourself and the lack of trust. And I mean, I can go on forever, man. I mean, these are not pretty terms, but they're real. You're picking that pain versus picking the pain of the journey, of the unknown, of the, what are they gonna say? How am I gonna do this? What am I gonna do in my parties? How am I gonna explain that I'm not drinking? What will happen when I'm confronted with that terrible craving? You know, how will I go through that? Like all of that is scary as hell too. So it's either you're picking this pain or you're picking this pain. Here's the difference. And this is powerful, so open your ears, open your heart, open your mind. The pains may feel equally difficult, right, to navigate through. You may think, fallacy, but you may think that the easier pain to navigate because it comes with the reward of feeling good for a little while, right? When we actually have the drink inside of us and it's working and you feel good, or the drink or the drug or the porn or the whatever, is this pain, right? The one where you're still doing the same thing. If you pick that, maybe it's gonna be a lighter pain because at least if nothing else, you do get the high that we seek so desperately. And so you may think that this is a lighter pain, but it isn't. Because this pain actually keeps you stuck. This pain pulls you back, in fact, every time that you do it. Whereas this pain may feel more difficult and more raw and more real, because man, I can tell you that fighting those cravings and giving yourself permission and learning to set boundaries with the world so that, you know, you kind of don't give a shit about whether they give you permission or not because you need to save your ass. Those are hard things. And going through the early stages of sobriety is not easy. That's why I'm always so focused on creating content for you guys to help, you know, navigate those difficult days. But this pain moves you forward. This pain is actually that opening the curtain, right? This pain is actually getting you to a place where you are actually starting to claim your life back and to transform your life. It doesn't feel like it. You don't know it at the time. No one tells you that. Life feels really hard when you begin, you know, your sobriety, especially if you choose, you know, a moment in time. Again, there's never going to be a perfect one, but I started in November. And so I remember my Thanksgiving was me holding on to the sink and shaking, hanging on to my then boyfriend and breathing hard and saying, I feel like I want to die. And I didn't die. Here's the good news. I didn't die. In fact, it's almost like I was just beginning to be born again. I mean, not to sound weird, but I truly was beginning a new, completely different life than the one that I'd known up until then. So, choosing your pain, giving yourself permission. Nobody needs to give it to you. The world is not going to give it to you. Your yoga teacher is not going to give it to you because she's going to say, let's get a goat and a glass of Chardonnay, right? Your boss, your wife, your husband, your child, your priest, your fill in the blank. The world operates under the impression that alcohol is a delightful treat. And for some people it is. Alcohol is not the devil. I mean, it is poison and jet fuel, so it's not ideal. But some people can just enjoy a glass here or there and zero judgment, whatever, you know, you do you. But if you in particular are struggling and your life is going off rails, in small or large ways. Like there's never, you don't have to get to the large ways in order to stop. You can't all of a sudden have that early awareness. I wish I'd done this, 10 years before. I mean, I don't regret my past, but I kind of wish that I'd had those 10 years of being present for my child, of being the best version of me. But I didn't, and I didn't know. I didn't know. I had to give myself permission. And I had to understand that fear that came with the curiosity of asking those questions was the most important co-pilot in what would become, this magnificent journey that I became, immediately catapulted in the minute that I started doing the work of recovery. And it was fucking brilliant and magnificent, with good days and bad days. But big cliche, even my worst day in recovery is better than my best day in drinking. And that's true. That holds true for me. Cliche or not cliche, whatever. I hope I gave you some stuff to kind of, get curious about. Because my biggest question to you is, which pain are you picking? The one that keeps you stuck, maybe it's easier, but it keeps you stuck. Or the one that moves you forward. They're both going to be difficult at the beginning. This one, this pain, the good news, I don't want to miss that point. The good news is this pain gets less and less painful and more transformative. And by that I mean it starts getting replaced with so much goodness and so much power and so much, connection with the world and yourself and all that stuff that is hard to even describe. It's so worth it. But it's difficult when you're stuck where you may be stuck, my love. So, keep opening my emails. Keep listening to my videos. Keep listening to your heart right now as it's saying, oh shit, this girl may have something there. And ask yourself, can you afford to stay in the place where you are? Can you afford to stay stuck where you are? Can you afford to leave your life randomly to see what happens if you keep doing this? What are the consequences? I was lucky that when I drove multiple times myself drunk, but especially in 2009, I had the one time where I drove my child and I, and that night I fell to my knees when he said, "Mommy, I'm so scared. I thought we were gonna crash. And it's my fault, Mommy, because I knew that you were drunk and I should have called your friend." And in that moment, my whole world broke. And I hated myself with a depth that I am hopefully never going to feel again in my life. And I'm grateful for all those feelings, no matter what. And I say it shamelessly because, again, at the time I thought I was a shitty person, and now I know that I was just living the representation of my addiction, of the disease that I'm grateful, frankly, to have, because it allows me to do what I do today and to hopefully help you, if you're struggling with this, change your life. So, all right, I'm gonna go. I have stuff to do.